Have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely and utterly trapped? I mean, where going back just wasn't an option, but moving forward seemed absolutely impossible? Well, today, we're diving into one of the most powerful stories ever told about facing those kinds of odds, about finding a path where there is no path, and what it really means to stand firm when all you want to do is run.
Right here, this single verse. This is the heart of the whole story. And let's be honest, it's a promise that goes against every single one of our instincts in a crisis, right? Our gut tells us to fight, to scramble, to do something. But this suggests a totally different kind of power. A power that's found not in frantic action, but in stillness.
Okay, so with that incredible idea in mind, let's get into the story. Because to really feel the weight of that command to be still, you have to understand just how hopeless the situation really was.
I want you to just imagine the feeling. Only days before this moment of terror, the Israelites had walked out of Egypt as free people. For the first time in generations. They had just seen mind-blowing miracles, plagues, deliverance, you name it. They were on this massive emotional high, marching towards a brand new future. But that amazing feeling of freedom vanished fast. It turned into what felt like a perfect trap. Just picture the scene. In front of them, there's this huge, impassable body of water, the Red Sea. On both sides, you've got rugged mountains hemming them in. And then they look behind them and see the dust cloud of an entire army. There was literally nowhere to go.
And we're not talking about just any army. The story tells us that Pharaoh sent 600 of his absolute best chariots. Think about that. This wasn't just some small force. This was the elite, special ops unit of the most powerful military on the planet at the time, and their mission was to drag them back to slavery or just wipe them out.
And this comparison just lays out how terrifying the mismatch was. On one side, you have the world's superpower, trained soldiers, weapons, the whole deal. And on the other side, a massive crowd of recently freed slaves. We're talking men, women, children, with no army, no training, and absolutely no defense. The situation wasn't just bad, it was completely hopeless.
And in that total hopelessness, fear just took over. This is what they screamed at their leader, Moses. It's such a sarcastic, bitter question. And what's so wild here is how fast that fear completely erased the memory of the miracles they had just witnessed. The immediate threat became way more real to them than the God who had just performed the impossible to set them free.
So, right here, at this absolute peak of panic and terror, Moses issues a command. And it's a command that defies every single human instinct for survival you could possibly imagine.
This is the turning point. Instead of shouting out a battle plan or a strategy for escape, Moses gives a command for their hearts and for their minds. He tells them, first, stop being afraid, and second, stand firm. Basically, hold your ground and get ready to watch for a deliverance you can't even imagine yet.
Let's just stop and think about how completely radical this was. I mean, the logical options were what? Fight, try to negotiate, or surrender. Moses tells them to do none of the above. Instead of action, he commands a very specific inaction. Stand firm, be still. It was probably the last thing anyone expected to hear.
And this is so important. Being still in this story doesn't mean being lazy or passive or just giving up. No way. It's an active, powerful choice. It's the conscious decision to say, I refuse to panic. I refuse to let fear call the shots. It's an act of surrendering the outcome to God. And it's right after this command to be still that another, even stranger command comes through. Now it's time to move, but in a direction that makes absolutely zero sense. Seriously, can you imagine hearing this? God tells Moses, tell the people to move forward. And everyone's looking around like, forward where? You mean straight into the Red Sea? It must have sounded like complete madness. The very thing that was blocking their path was now supposed to be their path.
And then the unimaginable begins to unfold. All through the night, this powerful wind starts to roar. And it doesn't just push the water away, it divides it. It piles it up into these literal walls of water on both sides. And by dawn, right where there was once a chaotic sea, there is now a dry path.
But here's the thing. The miracle wasn't a movie for them to watch. It wasn't enough to just stand there and see the path. They had to act. They had to take that first step, and the next one, and walk between those towering walls of water. Their trust had to become obedient movement.
So as the very last Israelite steps onto the far shore, Pharaoh's army is right behind them, charging down that same sea corridor. But then, the walls of water crashed back down. The very same sea that was a path to deliverance for God's people became the instrument of destruction for their enemies. The threat was gone, for good.
Okay, so what an incredible story. But it was recorded for a reason, you know? It's not just ancient history, it's a lesson. So let's talk about how this event from thousands of years ago applies directly to our lives today.
A Red Sea moment isn't just a tough day. It's a very specific kind of crisis, and it's usually defined by these three things. You feel like you can't go back, you absolutely cannot see a way forward, and that pressure, that fear, that enemy, it feels like it's closing in fast. It's that feeling of being completely and utterly stuck.
And here's a really profound and honestly, maybe even an unsettling idea from the story. God didn't accidentally lead them into this trap. He led them there on purpose. Now, why would he do that? Because trust when things are easy is just a theory. Real trust, the kind that's forged in fire, is only built when you have no other option but to rely on him.
So this whole incredible event really boils down to three transformative truths for us. First, God might lead you to an impossible place just to show you what he can do. Second, your first move shouldn't be panic, it should be stillness, a surrender, because that's what comes before the breakthrough. And third, when God finally does make a way, faith requires you to have the courage to get up and walk on it.
All right, so what does this actually look like for you right here and now? How do we take this ancient story and apply it to our very modern lives? Look, your Red Sea probably doesn't involve a literal army. Your Red Sea might be a devastating financial collapse. It could be the shock of a terrifying medical diagnosis, the pain of a relationship that's just broken apart, or a career failure that leaves you feeling totally lost. Maybe it's a door that slammed shut that you were so sure was your destiny. These are our modern-day impossible situations where we feel boxed in.
And this, right here, is the final thought I want to leave you with. Trusting God doesn't mean the impossible situations in your life will just magically disappear. It doesn't eliminate the sea. What it does is it gives you the eyes to see the path he is making for you through the sea. The question for all of us isn't whether we'll face a Red Sea, it's how we'll choose to respond when we do.